call the meeting to order. This is Wednesday, November 16th, Finance Committee. And may I ask the clerk to call the roll, please?
We have Tom Worthen, Jody Smith, Tom Hannon, Julie Warren, Gerald Stefanski, myself, Matthew Rose, Norma Scoggin, and Bernie Pigeon.
Thank you. We have a quorum. First item on our agenda, A, is the review of the town meeting of October 24th. Anyone care to make any comments about that meeting or any,
We're talking about the town meeting?
yes,
I don't have my hearing aid on, so.
want to borrow one of mine?
The one thing that bothered me more than anything was the article where they reversed an article that was passed concerning
They deleted the previous article on the Wareham
the
redevelopment.
redevelopment.
Yes.
authority. I mean, I think that was unfair to the hundreds of people that showed up a year prior and voted and discussed it and everything else. And they never even got a chance to get in and fail, to get applied. And it's because of a rather small group, I'm sure, decided that they didn't like to lose the authority to let the town participate on a broader basis. So
Well, you realize
I just thought it was not the right thing to do, where you go back and just something that wasn't even employed yet, but discussed, voted on, passed, and then never got implemented.
but you realize,
Within a year later, you go and pull it out because
I'm sorry, Tom,
you don't like it.
you realize that was a petitioned article?
There was a petition article.
Yes, it wasn't the selectmen putting it out or any administration.
Well, I sense that the hands of the selectmen were somewhat behind the whole effort. But I just thought it was unfair to the people who had passed the article and worked hard to get it passed, that it just, all of a sudden, the powers that be didn't particularly like it, and they figured a way to get it turned down. And some of the arguments used about costs and everything else, the town is employing outside experts to make many of the reviews that they're making. They're doing it on the downtown, they're doing it on the Tremont Nail, they're doing it on the dam. I mean, it's not that there's any money involved in the thing, it was just a matter of who was going ahead and discussing what they might be doing. And I just didn't think that was fair. And I wasn't good, because we hadn't discussed it that way in this meeting. I didn't want to get up and say, wait a minute, what are we doing, stepping on the toes of a previously passed.
And I think the previous article was a petitioned article too. I think the previous article, yeah,
Yeah.
would have been,
I would second what you said. It seems, we seem to do that a lot in this town. Re-vote after we've already voted for something.
Like we don't trust the voice and the decision of the populace.
Yeah.
That somehow there's an attitude that the rest of us know better than the will of the town. And I agree with you, Tom. It could be 2 years from now, we would say, maybe this isn't working the way we envisioned,
Yeah.
but let the group, as part of that, decide. And I feel like it feeds into the attitude as a newcomer to Wareham of, we don't have control, we don't have a say, nothing changes. And that's too bad, because it's a wonderful town, and I think that's difficult for many people. You've sensed it at the meeting, that and other things that were discussed, I thought.
at least, or the least of all, a courtesy reference that this is happening. And allow the previous petitioners, if they choose to speak, they can do so, but they are aware of what's going on.
I think to some extent, it's just built into the whole town meeting system, because you have different people at every town meeting. and people are gonna have different views.
Yeah, and you can build a small consensus and
Yes.
get them there and flood the meeting and
Exactly.
control the
So,
vote.
so I mean, I think to some extent, this is just going to happen. It would be really impossible to keep it from happening. And I do think we've been talking a lot, and I've been thinking a lot about transparency and how important that is, and I don't sense that there's a lot of transparency. I always feel like there's something going on that I can't quite put my finger on. Am I right?
Oh, I agree with you.
Yeah,
Transparency is good, but in that environment, if we had little buttons to vote instead of having to raise your hand with a
exactly.
card,
No, exactly.
you would have you might have some different results.
Yeah, I'm not talking about transparency of how everyone's voting. I'm talking about transparency of everything that's really going into the proposals and the decisions and all that.
Yeah.
It feels like there's always something, some subtext that I just don't get.
And I guess the information that's provided,
Yeah.
such that folks feel that they have the time, which is another issue when you get a budget very late, but the information, as I was sharing, Tom and I went to the FinCom annual meeting, and it was a wonderful tutorial in how do you, and what they discussed is it wasn't always that way either in the town that was presenting. It took a lot of years, a lot of effort, and a lot of commitment to how do we make this a more engaging process? What do the citizens need to make an informed decision? And now let's go find that information and present it in a way that they can understand and digest, so.
It's a little paternalistic to just sort of say, well, this is how it's gotta be done, or we can't do that.
Well, Bernie, you've been to the Northborough presentation.
Yes.
And the John's Coder. I mean, that's a whole different approach to at least just the budget.
In fact,
In terms of
if I may, you and Julie were at the meeting, and this is an excellent lead-in. By all means, would you tell us what you experienced and what you saw in that meeting?
I've gone to 4 of his presentations, and every one of them I said, this is a good model.
Yeah.
And I've made no impact back here as to the quality of.
Did you
the
see
information
anything
we're
that
getting.
did you see anything that you'd like to have incorporated here?
We get the whole goddamn thing.
Yeah, I circulated the PowerPoint, but I think for me, takeaways were giving people some history, some context, which is 2 to 3 years ago, this is where we were, this is how we're progressed. Everyone, this is what's coming. How are we gonna pay for this 2 years out? You've said you want this, let's talk about how we're gonna pay for it. And then the other, what I thought was very interesting about the budget and the whole preface to it, helping the citizens understand, why do we need a budget? What's a glossary of terms that you need to understand? And this is how it's going to play out. This is how the budget came to be. This is your role as citizens, asking questions, looking at what we're presented, because this is your budget. And it was really fascinating.
You can go online and download
Yeah.
the budget.
I circulated the PowerPoint and all
Yes,
the
the PowerPoint,
PowerPoints.
yes.
Yeah.
But you can get their whole budget to it, his
Yeah.
whole package.
Tom, his budget report, 142 pages.
142 pages, yeah. And he
But-
takes
but
pride in
I mean, it's
that.
online, available to anybody.
Oh, indeed, and very detailed too, very
Yeah.
detailed.
But he also starts early. We talked about that, about when he starts the
Yeah.
process.
Oh, yeah.
Which was last month, early September. He said, because he said, for the next 3 months, we're into it, but they ask very early, have a town-wide, departmental-wide, consistent financial policy on how they're going to manage budgets and their department. And it's the same one across every single department, and everyone complies and holds themselves accountable. So anyway, enough of my speech,
Well,
but
you speak in terms of, like you said, it starts last month for him. Understand, he is telling you how his administration does things, and it suggests, I sat with Derek, it's over a month ago.
Sure.
We've gone through what his projected revenues are and his costs, so it does start early.
yeah.
But it's, what he's giving you is all the background that goes on in the prep for it.
That's right, that's right.
And so it's not to suggest that we aren't doing it.
No,
He
sure.
is very thorough.
Mm-hmm.
Because every time, Tom, you've been there 4 times, I've been there with you, and we've all been to the same thing. He just gives such a presentation,
Yeah.
you can't not go.
Right, so.
It's so thorough.
Very, for me, it was just educational, helpful for me as a newbie to understand town, in a town, how it
Mhm.
works, so.
I thought
But you've got family from Northborough, right?
Yes, my
So
mother and father,
we're in
35 years.
We're infecting this place.
35 years.
I thought the handbook was, I've started going through that, and that's
Yes.
incredibly helpful.
Yes, very, very.
And very, very easy to understand.
Mhm.
And very fair to the people. Anybody who's walking down the street that wants to know something,
Yep,
it's available to them.
mhm, so,
That's
and then,
And also to students in the school and everything else. This is how the town works, and
Mhm.
it's just a very good vehicle for understanding where you are, and where you're going, and what the risks are associated with it. Why, some of the whys.
the other, the
Did you
other,
get a, oh, excuse me, go ahead.
no, just one more point. There was another presentation that I thought was very good by the manager of Needham around civility. And how do you bring information to the citizens so they feel like they are part of the town and helping and supporting decisions that are being made? And she said, we have had a number of community events throughout the year where people come together. The tree lighting, they have a whole variety of things. So that she said our town meetings have become very civil as a result because people see each other at these events and get to know each other. And she said, again, it's been a long process, but she said we really decided we had to focus on civility and bringing people together. And she's been there 33
The
years.
Needham lady,
and-
yeah.
yeah.
Terry, do you want to say that?
We're talking Derek's finance staff compared to the finance staff that the presenter had. I mean, that would be a question to ask, you know, if this guy, he's got 3 accountants supporting him and Derek has 1. I mean, that's why he can do a volume of more work than Derek appears to do.
And actually, we can go on the website because his budget has every person and whether they're full-time or part-time in their salaries. He breaks it down by
So that would be
person.
interesting to
Yeah,
see,
you're
because
right,
you're
Jerry.
comparing 2 things and you know what
Yeah,
this Derek has for staff. You
Yeah,
don't know what
yeah.
these guys have.
Exactly.
And what is the size of the town, and what are the
20,000.
20,000.
It's
smaller?
Yeah,
Just a little smaller than ours, yeah.
yeah. And Northborough has, not a tremendous amount of business, but some business, commercial that is brought in, but,
Doesn't have any high school, it's,
Yeah, they
Regional.
just go through 8th and
Regional.
then-
Algonquin.
Yeah,
and then they go to
Algonquin.
regional.
then they're like a regional school.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's different, it's just that the information is so dumbed down
Mhm.
that people can,
Can understand.
anybody could understand what's
Yeah,
happening.
right, right.
And it's got a history, where it's been, where it's going.
Mhm.
It's got 3 years before, I think.
3 years before,
The current one, and then
2 years
3
out.
years out. I mean,
Yeah, it's basically a 5-year window.
we're sitting here, we don't know a god, or I don't know a
Well,
goddamn thing.
now, wait a
about
minute,
it.
Tom. If you
I'm
go on the
serious.
website and you come on the finance committee website and you want to know where the budget goes, we go back to
I'm not concerned with the
2015.
budget. Where are we today versus the budget?
You mean your year to date?
Huh?
Your year to date?
Yeah. We don't have a year to date.
No, we can't, we
They
won't.
just take a quarter of the year. They say it's a quarter year, this is what we should be through. It's dumb.
Just for the record, if we're talking about Northborough, comparably, our budgets are pretty close.
Not too
revenue-wise.
far, not too far different, no.
Yeah, they're very, very close,
Yeah, interesting.
yeah. I mean, I'm looking at them now, so this year's budget was 73 million. So.
Theirs was 60, right?
Theirs is 73, ours,
Ours is, ours is 70.
yeah, it's
About
in
the
that
same.
ballpark,
Yeah,
yeah, so.
Anyway.
Yeah.
See, I came from
I'm
a
sorry
place
you have
where
to
we
try-
get all that information, you know, I was a department head
But
with a computer program, and I could look back and I could print out a report. You came into my office and said, how much have you spent so far? I just gotta hit a button and it's gonna tell you exactly what I've spent so far in the year, and what the percentages are. And Bernie will tell you, when I first got on here, I brought this up, and I kinda got hooted out of the room, cause it's very expensive. You
Yeah.
know,
So,
It's- we totally
so that's it.
different
How do we
accounting
help
system.
Derek is really the question. What can we do as a committee to, you know, with, just as Jerry said, not enough staff, and
Yeah.
what can we do? Right.
Well, all the information is in the computer.
Yeah.
It's a matter of being able to display it. We have the old Vadar system, and you can't hit the button and produce reports that you can in the Muni system.
Right.
It's technology.
Well,
And
we're
it-
behind in the technology curve.
We're way behind.
We're way
Right.
behind.
Yeah, we know that.
Well, what are we doing about that?
Well, if we have 1.5 mil sitting around somewhere, we could buy a new
Well,
system. Bit of training.
That's
no.
be a good place to spend
Yeah.
I mean, the
1.5 million.
the munis, the licensing for that per year is a little over $60,000. I mean, that's
Well,
not exactly
versus
junk, but
what
it's
do
a
we
great
spend-
system.
What are we spending now?
Oh, I understand, I'm just saying, but that's what people look at sometimes, you know, it's not cheap.
Right.
Well, this is an example of, you explain what you're gonna get out of this.
Yeah.
In order to get
It-
people on
indeed.
board about spending
That's right.
money.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you spent that, what power does it give you? What data does it give
Right.
you? And
What efficiencies does
Yeah.
it bring?
What does it actually
Or-
save?
When you say the information is so readily available,
Yeah.
keep in mind that the report that we produce is available 1 week before town meeting. They pick it up at town meeting, open the pages, read the articles, and as if they have said, because I remember 3-4 years ago, we produced a nice flashy copy. Cost us almost $20 a piece. And someone gets up and says, very nice, but when I go home, I'm gonna throw this away. I thought, So the information is there,
Town
and
government.
they don't.
yeah,
Now,
Town meeting.
oftentimes, Jody and I have told stories about where we came from, basically in Stoughton. We produced a report that was that thick, spiral bound, tabs and everything, and everything was there. But we were there a minimum of 4 nights.
Not once did I get through in 4 nights, it was usually 7 or 8, sometimes
Yes.
9.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So it's a difference. It seems, we have a goal every time the moderator brings her gavel down, not to go beyond 10 o'clock, but get everything done by 10.
But if we are the legislative body, if the town meeting is the legislative body for the town, you wouldn't expect most legislative bodies to rush through things like this. You would have time for debate, you would have,
Well, my original point was, I thought they got steamrolled at town meeting, and I didn't think that was a fair process.
And I think that happens too often, Tom.
Okay.
I truly think it does. If they were to advise the others, the previous petitioners, what was going on, they might have had some discussion, disagreement, but we seem to revert directly to adversarial.
It was the presenter of the original one who's got the,
Yeah,
caused its failure.
but that's the creature, excuse me,
For people, yeah.
that's how it goes.
Yeah.
If they don't know, if no one wants to get up and address it, you keep on going, because they have a choice of doing so. And like Jody and I said, we serve refreshments too. We did, so, we planned this, because we were there till 11. We didn't go to 10, that's too early. Till 11 o'clock, 7 to 11,
Yep.
minimum of 4 nights.
and how many people showed up and stayed through the whole
Well,
thing?
It was a representative town
Okay,
meeting.
yeah.
And normally, I would say there was between 120, 130 on most nights. There was some nights.
21.
But there would be a roll call vote to see if there was still a quorum there come 9:30, let's say, at night or
Yeah.
whatever, I mean, it got hairy.
It's 21 reps per precinct,
Yeah,
8
168.
precincts.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
But it was
You know,
different.
what Tom's speaking to, and sometimes, unfortunately, that's the difference between an open town meeting and a representative town meeting. An open town meeting, you can load up the meeting.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, whereas a representative, I'm not gonna say they're any more knowledgeable or they're any more informed, but they were there the last time, you know, so it's,
Continuity.
Yeah,
yeah, they kinda saw some of the history going forward, where that's not always true.
and in a representative, everybody received the paperwork at least a week beforehand.
Before,
So all the members or the representatives were fully informed, and there was an awful lot of dialogue, obviously, because that's why it would go so late. There'd be a lot of people who would be speaking.
Yeah.
The real thing gets back to the fact that we've got two fire departments and two water departments, and how they meet on the same basis where those meetings are stacked when they go over their budget.
Yep.
So, I mean, you guys had a budget, your fire department was in that budget.
Yes.
So, I mean.
We didn't have any separate departments.
We need much more a helicopter view of what the hell's going on in this region, to pull together and be more, in a more effectively administered area.
Yeah, now, you,
Now.
early on,
when I get off of the
you were
committee,
comparing
you can say that,
Northborough.
not.
Earlier, we were comparing Northborough to manpower to what we probably have. And I would speculate he has more staff. Our accounting has 2 people, and they work weekends in order to just accomplish what they have to do by deadlines.
yeah, and probably, Bernie, a couple of open recs, I
Yeah.
would imagine, yeah.
Now, we don't have year-to-date yet because the one issue is treasurer hasn't been able to finish their reports to send them up to accounting, and they only have staff to enter that data to push the year-to-date. The actual closeout of the previous fiscal year is still with DOR, and DOR has advised us, because they're shorthanded, that we may possibly have the certification sometime in December. Once we had town meeting, we went back to the bottom of the list, because we no longer needed certified free cash. And that's every department, because there's 2 people in accounting, there's 2 empty desks. No part-timer. The selectmen used to have 4, they're now down to 1.5. Treasury, treasurer's office has 2 or 3 empty desks, and he has to keep people because of accounting processes. The one who takes the income cannot account for deposits, so there's extra people down there. Excuse me, but they're still shorthanded. With planning downstairs, there's Ken. He had an assistant hired for a short time,
So we
found a
must
better
be-
offer.
Our budget, we may be way under budget. I mean, we must have a lot of money sloshing around someplace.
We have 15 empty positions,
Yeah,
and they're all funded. Those are regular funded positions.
okay.
They're not
So,
extra staffing.
at $40,000 a year, you got
That comes out,
$600,000
when
bucks.
that closed, because they can't do anything with it, because that's what we voted the line item for salaries in that particular department.
Sure,
So that sits there until we close it out at the end of the year, and all that extra comes in
Derek
free
could come
cash.
in here and request approval to, and we could approve it, and he could.
No, we
We
can't, we
figure it
cannot
out.
approve it, we cannot approve transfers of cash, unless it's out of our own budget. We have 50,000.
Don't tell me those guys can't figure out how the hell to get at that money. If it's not, we're not gonna sink because they can't move the money.
No, they have to go to town meeting. Required by law to go to town meeting to transfer the funds.
Then in the next town meeting, they wanna be able to have something in there that they'd be allowed to move a modest amount of cash, at their discretion. Something, I mean, you gotta, there's a way around that somehow.
Not
Can't tell me.
in, not in,
Don't tell me.
not in, well,
We're going broke, we've only got $1.5 million in the bank.
well, I'm sure my friend Sheriff Joe McDonald has a couple empty rooms
Huh?
that he'll accommodate you if you want to try transferring that money. But that's the issue with why we don't have the first quarter, and also why we don't have the closeout of the previous fiscal year, and also free cash.
So it's all accountants, basically, a lot of these open seats that we have.
And we
right
got,
now are
and we got
accountants.
a guy working
Financial.
12 hours a day in information services trying to hold the whole goddamn thing together.
Yeah. What were you saying, Tom? I'm sorry to get,
A lot of these open seats are accounting positions or
No.
financial positions.
oh, no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to imply that they were out of the accounting
It's
department.
across the whole town,
They're
correct?
across the whole town.
Right.
There's EMS, there's water resources, sewer.
Mhm.
Sewer has 7, it's supposed to have 13. EMS, there's at least 2 or 3. We have 3 ambulances, we're only running 2. We only use the 3rd one usually during the
I
summer.
can settle that overnight.
Pardon?
That's it, privatize the whole thing, privatize that. Just get rid of it. I mean, you got
Run that by
Brewster.
town meeting and they'll,
Well, let me tell you how that works. If you privatize it, if you have a town ambulance come to your house and take you to the hospital, you don't pay for that. That covers under your insurance. If Brewster comes and takes you from your house to Toby Hospital, it's a $3,000 bill. Big difference. And then you have to file for an exception for the town, and then Derek can discount it or cover it totally for you. Because as a citizen, you should get covered for that. But that's how it works if you privatize it. And I know from personal experience.
and not to mention, the selectmen have the option, because we run the ambulance, unpaid bills, they write them off every year. Every about 3-4 years, they go in and write off the bills. Whereas if you use Brewster, they send you to a collection agency.
What do we do?
We write it off.
No,
Or-
wait a minute, we send some to the
Yes.
collection.
Yes, we do, but if it's unpaid for a couple of years, the selectmen have the option to write it off. They just take it off the books, which is appropriate because it's an outstanding debt that's uncollectible.
And
Yeah,
what
because
does
it's not
Brewster have?
covered under your insurance.
Huh?
It's not covered under your personal insurance. So Blue Cross won't cover it, whoever you have.
So if Brewster doesn't get paid, what do they do with it, right off the book?
No, they go after you. They
Hire
take you.
collection attorneys.
Yeah, they hire collection attorneys. Big difference. Town doesn't do that, very rarely, but Brewster will.
And the town offers an insurance policy for you to purchase that is really cheap, that if you anticipate frequent trips to the emergency room by our EMS people.
It's Bradley Insurance or something, Bradley or something with the B.
Yeah.
It's like $50 you pay for the year or something for that. It's not.
I know your fire folks will tell you that so many of the trips they take are transport to the hospital.
Yeah.
It's every fire department, that's really
Yeah.
a lot of their day is taken up in that.
So it's interesting with us because EMS is dispatched, either Wareham or Onset dispatches a truck.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, I don't think they bill the person who called the ambulance.
No,
Because it's not part of their,
I haven't seen one yet, and I just had one last month, so.
okay, so they don't,
And it is,
They do-
and the fire truck was there first, the paramedic was right behind it, and the police were right behind them,
yeah.
in that order.
But I don't believe that Wareham or Onset writes a bill for their arrival.
I haven't
Oh.
seen one, so I don't think so.
One of the interesting things, I did want to, we were talking about like the book that you made, right? And then we've just rethinking about this town meeting, because this is the first time being on the finance committee for the meeting, how just, except for one person, the money part just flowed. The only thing people came up to talk about was that commission, the WRA, and the Tikas. That was really it. Those are the things that people.
The water pollution control didn't get one no, I didn't hear a peep
Nope.
out of $50-70 million what I went through.
$6 million total.
Six
Yeah.
million.
Surprising.
Like 22 million went through without.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
That's
was
not
amazing.
unusual, though. I've seen
12
that
now.
so many times. The budget, $60 million budget, look right through, and then they sit there and argue for an hour over a $5,000 playground set, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Right, I've seen it so many times,
Yeah.
it drives you crazy. You know,
I just found that so
'Cause you need it.
interesting. Cause I spent so much time thinking about the water part of it,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the ultimate $60 million that we're gonna have to pay for this.
Which is
And-
only the beginning,
Yeah,
right, right.
and there was just no pushback from that, and no comments, other than, Jim Muntz said it came up a few times, and that was it. There was just not a lot of people talking. I don't know if they didn't have the information, they didn't know, they didn't understand what they were proving, but it was
Well,
very interesting.
and also, there's a lot of towns all around the Cape that have got various water and.
Right.
and
Yeah, we heard that
treatment plants
in
that-
talking
Yeah.
to the folks at the
They're seeing-
FinCom meeting, yeah.
Yeah.
In some places worse than us. I mean,
Oh,
we
yeah.
heard that at the
A
meeting.
lot of-
And you
A lot of
suggest
folks.
an awareness. But you just alluded at how the people react to this. They're already aware of problems
Yeah.
with other treatment plants, and it's not unusual for our own to have same or similar. So they don't have to discuss it because they're already aware that there are difficulties
And
and
I,
we're addressing them.
and I think a sense that, you know, we've gotta do this,
Yeah.
you know. And in this case, I think that's justified. I mean,
Yeah,
we gotta do
yeah.
this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure, there's
It
no
was-
question, but.
It was helpful to the engineer was there. I
Yes.
thought that was good of Guy to have brought him. I thought that was really helpful.
This is, on this subject, this is a good opportunity because we toured it. And Tom, you survived very well getting your drink.
He's still here.
But you're still glowing a little bit though.
I can't hear you.
But those of us that were there, what was your impression of the tour?
I thought it was extremely helpful to actually see the real thing that we talk about all the time. And I think this would be true of other things too. I think, you know, tours of the schools and things like that as repairs are needed and proposed. I think there's really no substitute for actually seeing the thing you're having to decide something about.
So the problem with one of the problems with the town is they're not doing a good enough job of communicating the things that they're doing pretty well. I mean, the people in the town should know, the kids in the school should know what a sewage treatment plant does, what it looks like, and so they understand it. And we're not doing a good job of merchandising that. They've got, in the school thing, the other day, they talked about all of the out of the mock courses, which are online courses, that are available to the kids and they're being used from around the world. And the town doesn't know that, so Wareham Week, we should do a better job of, we need a marketing firm.
A
or-
liaison,
Huh?
Yeah.
a liaison
A
to.
liaison,
and to
so
feed
that
them
we're getting
information.
that sort of information out so that the people are informed
Right.
of some of the
How-
things that are happening well.
How would you, now we're live. So if you wanted to know what we were talking about, because we're talking about everything here this evening, you would be listening to the finance committee as it's advertised that we are live. So if you want information about what is going on, this is the vehicle for you to get that information, to listen to us. We have an email address, no one emails us with questions or the like. But what else can we do, really? Because as a group, this is our presentation. We can't go off as individuals.
I think it's a lot to expect that busy people are going to sit down and watch our meetings. I do think it would be better to put it into more digestible pieces.
You need this. This is how much,
Yes,
this
yes.
is how much you have to inform people. One screen. So whether it's a 2-minute video, a 3-minute video, or 3 concise bullet points.
Exactly.
That's the amount of attention you have to connect with a
Mhm.
working individual. That's it.
And
Oh yeah, your
unfortunately,
attention span is short term.
It's- yeah,
That's all it
it's
is.
very small.
social media is not a great way because it just invites a lot of misinformation, disinformation, backbiting, fighting, and it ends up being useless, absolutely useless. So it has to be something more purposeful, I think.
And it's difficult because I've been on back and forth on Facebook. There's at least 3 or 4 Wareham.
Right.
And I've been back and forth with some people on there. And I try to put out what we've done, and I'm accused of lying, distorting the truth, and
It's not helpful.
yeah.
Social
What other
media is
vehicle
not-
have I got?
Yeah.
Well, we have the
we got as
website.
individuals? I
We,
mean,
we have the website, we have the town website, which could use a lot of work, but it could be a place where bits of information could go out that would.
Wareham Week.
Yeah, and that's,
I mean, we should put
it's
the
a free
damn
paper.
sewer flow,
Yeah.
track it online.
And what they've told me, I actually met a reporter at one of the events, and she said, we would love more content. We'd love people to give us more information. Because she said, we basically have a part-time and not even a full-time reporter. They're part-time, there's two of
I
them.
think there's
But
only.
we need a firm that puts together this crap and puts it out.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, we need it, we need a media company or a producing
Someone,
company.
a retired
to-
media person to volunteer.
I'm serious, I mean, those people are available and they could do a good job and people would read it. I mean, you get people up to date,
It would
Okay.
be,
closer to being up to date.
Well, you
Anyway.
could set up a listserv, so once a week,
Yeah.
you've got a little blurb that goes out
Broadcasting
about what's
something.
going on. Yeah.
But instead, you know the obituaries, you know houses that are sold. You do know the middle school puts out a pretty good thing on who's the student of the month
Yep.
was and things of
Yep.
that nature. But there's a lot more detail that you could inform people. And so they feel better about the town too. They know more about it, they feel better about it because there's some good things that are happening, other than the finance committee.
Okay,
so,
I'll have to ask if we move on, and,
I think we exhausted that one.
4 of us were at the presentation for the schools in their budget workshop. And I like those of us who were there might give an impression as to what they've experienced and what they felt. Matt, you were there?
Yeah, I thought the information was, really, I mean, for the first one, we always call this one the wish list. This is always the big one, this is what we want, but I'll tell you, they're pretty much level funded. They're not asking for a whole hell of a lot more than they did last year. I mean, it seems a lot higher, but we know the teacher contracts and
Well, I
we
neglected to
know the
look up.
steps and bounds.
I would disagree,
Steps and-
37.8 million, or 9 million.
30 versus the 36 from last year?
37 down to 34, right, with application of funds?
Yes, with all the other fundings. that
Yeah,
they
with all the
have.
other fundings, but it still was about 36 mil.
7.7% interest, 7.5 more than they received last year.
That after the, 34.4
Yeah.
mil as a total from that, but that's,
And that is not, no requests for new hires.
no?
Well, I would dispute that, but that's all right. When it's my turn to talk, I'll get into that.
Oh, no,
When you dig down into some of this stuff.
Indeed. As you saw, I've asked for a copy of all the grants, because a lot of people are buried in grants, for the stipends as well as the salaries they're paying out and the benefits. And going out the door, Julie was on, our accountant, was looking at me, and she said, "You don't turn my emails." I said, "What?" I asked for the FY '22. She said, "No, you asked for FY '23." Okay, but one at a time, I want a baseline, because we get 22, we can go on and see what the other are, we can track it. But there's been some concern as to what charges have been made against the grants, and we just want to become more aware of it, because there's potentially people that are over there and paid with grants, and we'd just like to know that they're there versus they show so many teachers and the like. But it was very straightforward, the presentation. It pretty much mirrored the same format they used in previous years, will give us an opportunity to make some reasonable comparisons instead of searching. I was disappointed, there was no indication of any new programs or adjustment of existing programs to accommodate the shortfall that the students have experienced in learning for the last 2 years through COVID. And I thought that would be a critical issue going into the preparation for the next coming fiscal year, that be accommodated in some way. But they made no reference other than status quo, and that concerned me.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what they
It's
could
been
do
a
with
huge
like.
topic of discussion, hasn't it, been everywhere?
Indeed, and
Yeah.
for that budget that they presented, I would like to get more questions, but it indicated to me they're all back in the classroom and they're just going on as if nothing happened. And yet each year that it's elementary primarily, if you're in third grade, you're actually behind. And you've lost something that you should have gotten in first and second because of the circumstances in which you were learning during that period.
And Bernie, did you ask that question, or just it was your sense that there was?
It was my sense, I was there as more as a spectator.
Yeah, sure, of course.
I was listening to the,
Yeah, yeah.
each department had produced or present their budget and what they were doing. So it's becoming more, my presence, from my point of view, is I wanted to become aware of, although we were free to ask questions, aware of what they saw. Because this is the first opportunity for the school committee itself to be in, hear any detail how each department operates.
And looking at the challenges some of these kids are facing, I would imagine we'll see the impact of that maybe more than some other school systems.
You look at that presentation, how much support staff they have outside of teachers.
Yes,
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling.
secretaries.
No, I'm talking psychologists, physical therapists, social workers. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just a whole,
A lot of supporting the SPED program,
there's a lot of money being spent on, these kids came out of a,
yeah. Tough.
awful thing.
The
But,
social-
Some,
emotional
some
part.
come from a tough situation.
Yeah, I mean, Wareham's, every town has their own unique situations and problems. Wareham has different types sometimes, but they just have to deal with them. But I thought they did a great job with the presentation. And I really like the new business manager they have. I think she's very engaging, very straightforward. I mean, I've made a big deal out of transfers. I get all the transfers up to now that they've done and stuff, and nothing out of the ordinary. And I didn't expect to see anything out of the ordinary. But I talked to her, because I do my own little budget format. And some of these things I'm ready to come forward. If you look at, this is kind of the budget for the school I'm putting together. I take their numbers. That's why I dig down. I ask for a breakdown. You look at the budget wages, $100, staff, $50, whatever it may be. As you can see, this is the school one. It's superintendent, assistant to the superintendent. They had an assistant to the superintendent for special projects. And write down the whole thing. You can see the whole thing. You can see all this side's blank. I told the business manager I will put all this together, send it to you. I want the numbers, because last year when we went to the joint meeting with the selectmen and the school committee, I asked, the first question I asked, they kind of came out of their chairs a little bit, and we had another separate meeting a week or two later with the schools. There was a select person there, and
Now, we brought the
and
chair
whatever.
of the selectmen,
I'm really,
myself.
in using last year's numbers, I kind of look at this stuff and I dig down, and I'm going by last year's numbers. Salary teachers, regular daytime, regular teachers, last year, this is off their report, 22. This year, 30. That one just kind of jumps out at me. There's others that might be a cut here, there might be an add there. I've done the same thing to the town side. I'm very comfortable with the town side where I've gone. I started this back when, in the winter of 2020, then COVID hit and I had to stop, and it took me a while. Anybody that wants to see this, you'll get copies of this when I put this year's together. But this is a comparison of 22 and 23. You can see all the raises, how much staff they have. Whatever's there, I'm just looking at the first one. The town accountant, he went from 106,000 to 108, it's a 1.6 raise. That's not a lot of money. The assistant got a little bit more, so there's nothing out of the ordinary here. I'm not that comfortable with the schools, not yet. I mean, anybody that wants to see this, I like to see history. I can go back 2 years now, I'll get this year's numbers, and I'll be able to go back 3 years so you can see the pattern that's running.
Can you,
So-
just to interrupt, You have the town accountant of how much?
106 to 108.
Do you perchance have the accountant for the schools?
I have last year's. I don't have this year's
Yeah.
yet. Last year's, the business manager, as they give you, director of finance, they've changed the title this year, which they're notorious for doing. They change names sometimes, but the director of financing for the school side was $139,050.
Making almost 30 grand than Judy does down here.
And-
And Judy pays every single bill. They don't pay it over. And
Can I add a little bit more?
Certainly.
A staff of 5.
Yeah.
See, that's why I said that, it aggravates them. I'm gonna send this because I can tell you what I put together so far, and I saw a thing Bernie sent out this afternoon about the grant money. So I kinda changed the school one. So now I'm asking for salaries, obviously, but I wanna know what's being paid out of the budget and what's being paid by grant money. I added another whole column, so I went from to landscape, which I hate doing, but I figured, that's and most of these, this is administration. Most of those are regular salary. However, and I was gonna ask you folks, I don't wanna say, I didn't put too much emphasis on the special needs courses and programs, and how many teachers they have or don't have, and what their support staff is and all that stuff. I mean, I got some of it, but I really wasn't, the elementary schools, they got guidance, they got specialists, is
Social
how I
workers,
listed it.
specialists, yeah,
and
therapists.
left it alone. But, they got paraprofessionals, they went from 30 to 32, things like that.
Generally teacher aides.
Yeah, well, that's, I know they are, but that's,
Yeah.
it's, so it's not that, I didn't think their salaries or any of that was important. Most of it is grant money, and that's kind of where, you shake your head. They have an IT person in every building, or multiple. And I'm saying, boy, there's a lot of IT people on the school side, and we got, how many on the town side? I got here somewhere, but yeah, the director of student services, beyond school time, it just goes on and on and on, how many administrators they have. And I wanna know what they make. I don't think that's I think more information you have, I've never passed this out before, any members here, and I've never discussed it at an open meeting, because I was a little uncomfortable. People read too much into things sometimes. I can tell you, you talked about budgets. I use the town of Norwood a lot when I go on looking for information, what they're paying. Their budget's like that. You're saying it's probably 130 pages. Their whole town meeting book is 300 and something. It just goes on and on and on. And I use a couple other towns that use Munis, so they break it all down. So I can go on there and say they got 3 people here and 3 people there. So I just want you people to know, you will all see copies of this, and I am gonna send this. Do you want me to break the salaries down to grant money and budget money?
we'll get the information, yeah.
But this is just what they're getting paid. I'm not looking at what they're paying for expenses. I got I don't wanna say pencils and paper. I'm not gonna worry. I got expenses for the school, and all those.
No, well,
It was a
my
little mind-blowing
my request
how much.
was there's 3 issues: salary, stipends, and benefits. The rest was all services, but that's usually,
And a question I have as far as the grants are concerned. So they're programmatic, presumably, many of them. So let's say they're 2-year programs. So it kind of gets baked in. So when the grant money goes, my assumption is we have to make a decision. Are we keeping this group on or not? Are we finding that generally they're kept on and baked in
not sure.
going forward?
Not sure. It's difficult to know which one's doing what, because when we say their salary, their stipend, or with
Yeah,
their
right.
salary, they may be 2 hours a week they do something, and that's paid for out of the grant. Whereas in the salary,
Yeah.
predominantly it's on our operational side. That is to say, the operation of the school system. So they do break it down, because they have a grant, so a person's doing it, and it's paid portionally out of the grant. Or they get a stipend because they do particular services. So it doesn't show up, the staffing or the individual or individuals may show up as a number, but where their actual monies comes to pay their salary, it could be, it's something we don't see per se.
Because some of these numbers the schools gave me last year, and what I see they want to budget this year made no sense to me whatsoever. So some they counted the stipends in, some they just told me what the stipends were and didn't count the salary in. I mean, they were all over the place, so I'm kinda cleaning this up. I want to know what the bottom line is.
Yeah,
You
we're
know, I
trying to-
mean, it's,
Jody's trying to find some consistency.
Sure, of
That
course,
means
yeah.
that the year-to-year comparisons may not be all that helpful, because.
that's why I'm very
It's apples
comfortable with
and
the
oranges.
town side now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's
sure.
why I said, you know, in
Yeah.
Want the
and
phone?
it wasn't real easy getting all the town ones done, because we had COVID hit. I mean, I was
Yeah.
actually going to office, then all of a sudden everything shut down. And so that kinda shut me down. You know, they had more important things to do with everything going on in town hall for a couple of years, but, that's why I say I'm very comfortable with the town side. I have no problems. I defended this budget on many occasions. There's nobody really being overpaid in here. You know, that's why I look at this, and I know I wish Derek was here tonight, because I was gonna bring this up, that everybody thought how much he got, so I went looking at other towns. And I have a family member that works in another town, and said, my God, look at the raise he got. Well, it's a town of 14,000 people. There's a town manager, a town administrator, and a full-time assistant town administrator. So let's not say this town administrator, they got a full-time assistant with them, so please spare me, you know, but, yeah, so you gotta be careful when you look at the numbers. You can't just sit there and say, oh my God, they only making $100,000 in Bourne and he's getting $150,000 in Wareham. Well, what's the reasons why? Derek's been here a long time, he might have been brand new.
Well, we need context.
You
always
you
need
do.
context.
Yeah.
That's why I said, sometimes you gotta do a little homework. That's why I said, I got my favorite towns I go around to, and, cause I can read their reports pretty easy. You know, and they're all on munis, so they're all broken down. You go to Bourne, for an example, they do wages, and they do expenses. You know, you do another town, they do, like Wareham always does. Well, this is what I'm looking for, you know, so it's coming. And I think you'll see that it's interesting, and you're gonna ask questions too, why, you know, somebody got this kind of raise or didn't get a raise. You know, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I can sit here and tell you, the cops got 42 patrolmen,
45.
whatever it is, you know, police. We got 1 chief, 3 lieutenants, 3 detectives, 1 juvenile officer, 8 sergeants, and 32 patrol officers. So it's, you know, the sergeants are, you know, out on the road and stuff, so I mean, it's broken down. I think people need to see that. We're not, don't just say police wages are $1 million.
We can put an awful lot of information into our booklet, and it's primarily, as an example, the one we put out just most recently, 117 pages, double-sided. It was necessary that we print the articles in their entirety because they were zoning changes, bylaw changes. And each copy broke down to $11 per copy. I could have put more information in there. The articles wouldn't require it. Usually our regular town meeting in April has an inordinate amount of potential information. We just can't afford to put it all out there.
Yeah.
The slick copy that we put out 4 years ago was $20 per copy.
I mean, couldn't we, a week beforehand, you know, there's a million different social medias, there's Wareham Week, whatever, right? You put it out there in a PDF, and you could tell people if they wanna print it, they wanna print it, and then you could, cause, you know, we gotta think about paper, right? And be, you know, thinking about a green society more. You can print it if you wanna print it, or maybe you can bring a iPad and you can have it on your iPad to look at, and then just have a reduced document the day of the meeting. If we did a better outreach before the meetings, they could have all that information and it was fully access to them, then we'd have less responsibility that day, so we could save some of the printing, save the trees, and you could make the document this big if you wanted to, and that, you know, you could be way more transparent under using that type of philosophy.
What are the,
I'm gonna play the devil's advocate on this, because we've seen this 1,000 times on social media and the Wareham pages, that it sounds like a great idea, and for those of us that are technologically savvy, it's definitely feasible and possible. But our senior citizens who don't work technology or don't have the access to technology are not gonna have all the information because they can't access it online. They won't have the PDFs, they won't be able to get that. So if we don't print it, they're not gonna have it, so.
but the question is, could we
And-
reduce the number of copies we have to print?
Yeah.
If we basically give
Right.
people an option to do it themselves or to have it on their device, which is what I would do.
Well, I couldn't get anybody to take 2 home.
But we'd have,
Yeah.
but
You were
we'd
trying
have
to get them
to,
out.
And to have more information, which would be helpful. that
but we'd
whole,
have to
you
make
know.
full copies in order to be able to.
Some full copies.
Some full
Yep.
copies.
The question is there a
How
way
many?
to figure out how to do a reduced number?
Right, how many?
That's
Yeah.
the problem.
How many?
I mean, I'm just speaking, I have no problem, I mean, I've been trying to do more and more on the computer when I come to these meetings. Tonight, there really wasn't anything, not that I don't have all this stuff I could have brought on my thing. My wife, in the next 100 years, wouldn't even consider doing that.
Yeah.
She wants to hold it.
But the younger people have no problem with it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah. So the question is, are there legal requirements as to
that,
what we have to provide
that's why I was wondering,
printed?
I'm not sure.
The information in the articles is what we're required to print.
Print.
So,
Okay.
so,
Whatever pertinent information that supports that, we typically print.
but the question is, could we print what's required to be printed and then make the rest of it available electronically with a few copies of, hard copies?
Or at least have
It's always online.
have
Yeah.
some
Week before.
information in that, besides just the article, but then have something more expansive,
Right.
explaining a bit in more depth maybe, or something.
And a lot of people aren't gonna bother to look at that anyway.
Right.
That they're just not. But there are plenty of people who will.
But it's not like we have a huge turnout for these meetings. I mean, I
It
think
varies.
118 people that's really sad.
Well, that was fall.
Yeah.
That's how
Spring
many
is-
people.
Spring is usually.
My experience the last 2 years, spring was much.
Spring's upwards at 200,
Yeah.
250.
It's
'Cause
still
we
not a
print-
lot.
Usually we print 250.
Which is still small for a
Yes.
town our size.
And it
Is
seems
all
to
my-
be-
Which begs the question, should we
Absolutely.
have a representative town meeting?
Yeah, and it seems to be the same
There's pros
folks,
and cons to
too.
both.
I know, I realize that.
We see the
You know,
same
you-
folks there,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I understand the whole printing, it's kind of such a waste of paper sometimes, but I mean,
No,
I don't know,
definitely.
I don't know how you, like you said, if you could just put a book with the motions in there, what the article is,
Send them a flash
and go from there and have all the backup
We'll send
information
everybody a
online.
thumb drive.
We'll send everyone a thumb drive.
Would that actually save any money? I mean, it would save a little.
It would
Well,
actually.
in Marion, as an example, that's the entire booklet.
Wow.
Carries everything in it. And that's Marion. And they're an affluent community, you'd think they're very, much more well-read, much more technology savvy, et cetera. They have barely any information, I was aghast at what's printed. But anyway,
What
moving
does a
on.
thumb drive
Back to
cost?
the education just
How
for,
much did you say it cost to print the books?
11?
11?
11 apiece?
I could have done 250 thumb drives for less than that, yeah.
Yeah.
2,800.
Yeah, because I sell some
Yeah,
digital
let's-
stuff like that, and it's
But
cheap.
buy the
You can get them for like
computer
a
to put the
dollar
thumb
to
drive
Yeah, I
in
know.
too.
But
Depending
again,
on the
there are
size.
people who would not be able to.
No, no, I understand.
Yeah, and that's where the problem comes in.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody has found a negative issue for every presentation.
on the education thing.
Yes.
The one thing that bothers me more than anything is they get it down to the last buck. I mean, just keep it to thousands. And also, give me 2 to 3 years before, and give me 3 to 4 years, or down the road.
Projected forward,
How
yeah.
many students you got, what kind of students are there, what the hell's happening in the school, what's the dynamics of the thing? This is a dynamic situation, we wanna know what's leading up to it, what they expect to see coming out of it. And you said none of that in your.
Yeah, I will say that format, I do like the format that they gave us the numbers out from last year and so forth, where it had the year prior, or the 2 years prior, and then where we were this year. I did miss that, like, this doesn't
It
have
doesn't
any
have it?
previous information.
I see.
The
Yeah.
old format was literally line items by each school in each department.
So Bernie, this is the number, the 37 million? That's what they want to do?
Yes.
And what was last year's?
That would be,
It went up 7.5.
7.5.
Right, there's a bunch of,
7.5.
I'm not so sure.
Well, that's
that
the, see,
Upper
cost
Cape
of
is in
living,
there.
it's 14%. We're lucky they're only asking for 7.
Yeah, because they
yeah,
get,
7.5.
I don't think, it's not in there, I don't think.
Yeah, it doesn't match
I don't
inflation.
think it is.
Yeah, that's not an inflated, adjusted,
And you could almost make the
Proper.
argument,
Jesus.
they went up on utilities like gas and like 10%. I can't even sit here and say for sure that's gonna be enough to cover it.
Right.
Yeah.
No.
I'm talking town-wide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know where that number's gonna end up.
Yeah, there's no
You know?
cushion in there, is there?
I
Yeah.
mean,
Can you imagine doing a budget over Germany? For the utility expenses, huh?
Yeah.
yeah.
Damn.
Okay,
Yeah.
moving on. You all received the school finance circuit breaker.
Yep.
That was put out by DESI and gives a good information as the understanding of what the circuit breaker is. The second one I sent out on school finance, just as all the terminology that they use.
603, yeah.
Okay, now the next item on our agenda is our minutes. And I'd like to have some acceptances on, let's see, August
We have another one, right?
24th.
The 24th, is that the one we just got?
Yes, the first one will be August 24th.
I was gonna say, I'll read some off, I'm gonna make a motion that we approve the minutes of 8:24, 9:14.
No, excuse me, I'll have to ask that we do individually, because there may be people absent.
Right.
Well, I was absent for one, but I watched it. That's
should
all
be
you have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all you gotta do. You
But we
can, I
probably
can vote
should-
on it.
But we should do them one at a time, because not everyone has done that.
I kinda looked at who was missing there at what.
Well, we'll check that, okay.
Yeah,
Motion to accept as, August 24th as printed.
So moved.
second.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote. September 14th. Julie was the only one absent.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to accept September 14th minutes as written. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? It's a vote. One abstention. Next is September 21st.
So moved.
Second.
Absent again, Julie.
Go,
Motion
go
is
there.
made and seconded.
Don't say that word.
Any further discussion? Corrections? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One abstention. September 28th.
So moved.
Motion is made and seconded. The only absent is Dominic. He's not here this evening. So motion to accept September 28th has been made and seconded.
There's one correction,
Yes.
and it's under Article 13 on page 4. Tom is identified as Ms. Hannon. I believe that's incorrect.
That would be incorrect.
I haven't asked about your pronouns, but I'm assuming, so I would offer that
We're
correction.
Yeah.
Motion to accept as printed, as corrected.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded.
Aye.
Okay, it's the original maker of the original motion, Jody. We accept the correction.
Yes.
Okay. And the motion is made and seconded as corrected. Anything further? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote. October 1st,
Move to accept.
it's it was the two, oh, it's canceled, excuse me, that was
Oh,
the
yeah.
initial tour of the water pollution. October 5th,
Move to accept.
absent was Jody and Tom Hannon. Motion to accept as printed. Did you make a motion?
I did.
Okay.
Second.
Second.
Jody, you can't second. Matt seconded. Any questions or corrections?
I have a question.
Yes.
So, on some of the motions, the proponent of the motion and the second are not identified. Is that a problem?
No. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Two abstentions, John and Tommy. October
24th.
24th. Everyone was present. That was the town meeting. Motions made. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any questions, concerns, corrections? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? It's a vote unanimous. Thank you. We have,
I have a question, as a more
Yes.
universal one. Is the handouts that we get at this meeting, I'm thinking particularly the ones we got with the water pollution control, are valuable attachments. Where do these go where we can go and look at it with the total package that we had at the meeting, which would include the handouts?
you would keep them you would keep them personally.
Pardon me?
You would keep them personally. I keep everything. I have everything that's
Yeah,
been passed out.
I mean, anybody could go.
You say
look
somebody
at
from
it.
the public if they want.
Yeah, the
Right.
public,
And-
It should be the town clerk's office.
Well, no, the only thing town clerk gets is the minutes for filing.
really?
Well, I
Yeah.
would definitely think that the attachment should go with the history.
If they're referred to in the minutes, they should, yes, but we haven't typically do that. We've never done that before.
Well, I mean, I
It's
just.
never been requested. So it's never been requested, so it's never been an issue for us to consider.
Shame on me, I always assumed all the attachments were
I
with
mean,
the
I would think they'd have to be. I mean, just by the rules of order or whatever, how did it?
I sign them for 9 years, I sign and turn them in, and that's exactly what,
I'm
maybe
just
we
saying,
can
what are we
change that.
doing with them? And there's some
the,
good
uh,
information there that's important, relevant, and everything else, and it should be,
For the public?
what I gave you, Matt, this
Mhm.
evening, is that any reference in there that you can find, if you quickly scan it?
I
The selectman's office has a description of what the minutes must require, what is required in the minutes.
they must, you're saying it does include?
No.
He's checking.
The-
I-
He's
I-
checking.
Documents used by public body at a meeting may be retained separately from the minutes, but it's not required.
Anytime you go and look online about doing minutes for a
So,
meeting,
So, yeah, so
the
no, it's right
information
there.
that I've seen on Google and things of that nature generally include the handouts.
It's probably good practice. I know I've been the secretary of a nonprofit, and that's what I always did.
Yeah,
But I would
same
also,
thing.
in the minutes, refer to, it was a packet of information, and I refer by page.
It was
So
discussed.
it's something to consider doing going forward.
Mhm.
Oh, wait a minute. I am reading that wrong. However, once used by the public body at a meeting, the documents become part of the official record and must be maintained in accordance with the Commonwealth's Public Records Retention Schedule. So there has to be a copy of it somewhere.
I always, that's what I
Somewhere.
assumed they
Yeah.
were with them.
Now we know.
Yeah, no, it's.
No, we don't.
Starting today.
Starting today.
No problem.
Another issue, the minutes. Kelly has been employed to do so, and her contract has been renewed for 1 year, expiring October 1st. And I have her invoice correctly for the week ending November 4th, 2022, taking us all the way up to October 5th in this particular invoice, totaling 11.25 hours for a total of $281.25. Motion to approve, please.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion,
281.25?
questions?
Yeah.
Pardon?
It's
$281.25, $25 an hour.
Yep.
There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote. I'll say, I've already been paid, but the bill for Staples was $2,821.25 for the printing.
I move to approve.
As a formality, motion to approve
So
through
moved.
the reimbursement of the chair.
How much was it again?
$2,821.25 for 250 copies. 125 of them went into the recycling bin.
What are you gonna do?
Jerry's-
Well, can only guess is how many would have shown up.
How to use the thumb drive, though.
The motion's made and seconded. May I have who made the motion, please?
I did.
Second.
And the motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? School committee, some meeting dates, because I have the calendars coming up. November 17th, we were at their budget presentation. December 1st is the public hearing that is required under charter that the selectmen and the finance committee be present, at least as far as the quorum is concerned. And they will do another presentation, not necessarily of the one that we've been aware of at the workshop. Because I'm sure they'll be talking with Derek, and he makes the final decision as to actually how much they will have. Now, the budget that we present at town meeting, or is presented in our booklet, is the administration budget. And we as finance committee would, if we disagree with anything, have to amend it on the floor, giving an explanation as to why.
So Bernie, if they do the same budget, 37 and some change, and they present that, so we're not there to change the budget, we're there
We're
to
not voting
listen.
on anything.
No,
Right,
no,
just to making sure.
yeah.
But he did say that night, though, that he might be able to cut 1 more percent or some number like that, you know.
Yeah, they will come up with, they will present the budget that they are asking or requesting initially. Because 2 weeks after that, on December 15th, which by charter they're required, is to take a budget vote. So that line item that they actually vote on the 15th could be different than the one they had on the 1st and different than the one they had on the
And
17th.
that's the school committee that votes on the 15th.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Oh, school.
is
But they-
anyone voting on December 1st then, or is that just an informational?
That's informational.
Okay.
They're going to present what their request is, and it'll be adjusted based on available revenues. Because by that time, we will know, they turn it officially over on January 5th to the town administrator. And that's when it becomes part of the budget per se, what their request is. He may have a different figure. He is the final arbiter of what the figure is going to be.
Derek is.
Derek
Yeah,
is.
makes
So
sense.
it could be different than what they request, and they will have to request from the floor of town meeting sufficient funds to meet their request, which means they have to find it in the operational budget somewhere, because we walk out of there with zero monies left over.
Bill.
See, they have on their agenda tomorrow night to discuss the budget.
Yeah, that would be appropriate for them to do
What
so.
they're gonna do, I have no idea, but I know they need to cut somewhere.
And Derek won't know the figures until he gets the cherry sheet, final figures? Right, so,
He has arbitrary the figures that he suggests, because they've been talking about it up on the hill, as to how much is gonna actually come
you
down.
can probably
but
get
They just haven't voted.
you can probably get a preliminary on the
Yeah.
website.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to decide what you want to do with $1 billion left over, you know?
We give it back to the taxpayers.
No, that's left over after they refund the
After
taxpayer.
that,
No,
yeah.
give that back too.
And
Jesus Christ.
revenues so far in the first quarter are running ahead of last year,
Yeah.
which produced the $1.5 billion surplus.
20% over. There was a good presentation at the town meeting, at the annual meeting about it. Like, wow.
Yeah.
It was,
There's a lot of money out here.
yeah,
Yeah,
surplus is amazing.
Sure, but yeah.
We
Yeah,
wish.
it's unusual and certainly risky in terms of saying this is an ongoing situation.
Exactly, yeah, who knows next year?
Yeah,
It's,
that's what
it's
they
all
said.
debt. You understand, it's gotta be paid back. There's a lot of money out there, it's all on credit card and debts. Jesus. It's because the Federal Reserve put the money out there.
now, our next meeting
First,
December 1?
is,
Next one we got is the number first.
December 1.
I'm not sure what kind of information we'll have available. So the week after Thanksgiving, depending upon information. It would be unusual for us to have a meeting, because the only one doing any functioning is the schools.
Right.
And they haven't determined what their actual submission is gonna be, because on, the first is our next meeting, December 1st, is on a Thursday. It's over at the, middle school auditorium. And that's a joint meeting. And
And we need to put out an agenda for that, correct?
it's just an attending,
Okay.
that's one line.
It still has to be posted, yeah.
Indeed, it does, because it's an official meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're not
Are we
voting,
just joining that meeting, or are we sitting in front, or,
no, we're sitting as part of the audience. We're
Yeah.
usually first row,
okay, that's what I figured. Okay.
and,
Right.
They had the selectmen on one side, the finance committee on the other.
Right.
in the middle
That's how they
school,
have it.
the auditorium is very much a rectangle. And one wall is the, stage. And we've been in the front row.
Yeah.
Okay.
They usually set up a couple tables up front and we sit right across the front there.
It was interesting how much money they need to fix the lights in the auditorium in high school.
Is
How
that
much
two
they
hundred
come up
fifty
with?
thousand?
It's in
It
there.
was 250,000?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was-
a
yeah,
lot.
it's in their
That's
budget,
why-
yeah.
Yikes.
Oh, indeed it is, yes,
Yeah.
I think the
yes.
rest of
Yeah,
our
like I
town
say, it's in the
meeting should be
report,
in
I
the
can't remember
cafeteria.
exactly what it was, but I said,
Yeah.
ooh.
And their final vote won't be until December 15th. And so there's really, unless we get certified free cash as well as the closeout for FY '22, there's nothing for us to discuss. So we won't have a meeting, I would speculate, until beginning of January.
So we're gonna.
We're not getting in, the accounting gurus are not getting a monthly closing of how much is being spent? I mean, that money isn't, that number isn't available?
They're waiting
I
at,
mean, so.
Tom, you're dealing, and I must emphasize, please, every department is drastically understaffed. Drastically. And that is the reason everything is becoming so slow. They're prioritizing.
So we don't even know how we did in August?
The first 3 months usually produces the first quarter, July,
August,
July,
September.
August, and September. Judy hadn't gotten September's out of the treasurer's office yet to cause that closing to occur for the first quarter. And that's the one you're looking for. First quarter.
Well, yeah, that's what they tell us they're gonna give us, but haven't met that schedule yet, I don't believe.
They have not, because they haven't got all the information to produce it yet. Because some other departments are behind in delivering their information.
And I assume when we were fully staffed that that information would flow.
Oh,
So,
indeed, it had
yeah,
before, yeah.
yeah. Okay, so it's really. like
Our
everything
staffing
else,
took a
staffing.
hit even
Yeah.
through the COVID.
This is COVID fallout.
Yeah,
really.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, yep.
And Wareham is not unique. This is happening in businesses across everywhere. They're late with taxes, they can't close out books, they can't get audited financials, because there's just not enough accountants. Accountant, they're nowhere to be found. So this is a problem everywhere. It's not unique to Wareham.
You know what causes it? It's those 87,000 IRS agents that were hired. They stripped out every accounting department.
That's it.
I have a tough time believing that they don't know how much they spent on gasoline year to date.
If, year-to-date, it's possible to bring up any figure you want, year-to-date. Is it a complete figure that would produce the quarterly reports that are required? No, it is not. But I'm suggesting that it is not because they haven't got all the information to produce that report.
Okay, well, let's take this further then. How the hell are they gonna do next year's budget when they don't know what they're spending this year? I mean, it's that simple.
I can't answer that question. No,
Huh?
I can't.
Well, they better figure it out. I don't care, 12 hours a day, whatever it is, they gotta get it done.
Okay, moving back to calendar.
Huh?
Okay, they're turning the, school budget has to be turned over by the 5th
No, you're right.
of January.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right, Tom,
But they
but I
hired-
can't do anything about it for you. I can't help you at all.
Somebody should be doing something about it. I'm serious.
They're trying, but they
People won't apply for the job, qualified people, you can't hire anyone.
You see,
So
but
you
Tom,
figure-
when you presented the budget, then you say, how reliable is this budget for the future if you don't know where you are in the present?
You can hire.
That's
Absolutely.
where it is. So then they can answer that question for you. Well, 75%, you know.
It's like the schools,
Why are
they
we
want
worried
about
about next
10%
year's
for
budget
energy.
when we don't know what the
10%
hell
what?
the expenses have been?
but they
Tom, I talked with Judy yesterday.
Judy,
Judy Luzon, our town accountant, that produces those reports. I asked her why I haven't been able to get year-to-date. She explained she has not gotten all the information to create that report. Now, that's the best I can do, is give you an explanation as to why. I mean, I can't blame her. Those two girls are working weekends to complete what they have to do that is a priority work.
but if a gas bill comes in to the municipal maintenance department, somebody approves it, right? It goes through, so that at some point in time, we know how much money we're spending on these materials as we buy them.
municipal maintenance knows how much they're spending, but it doesn't mean the town knows what they're spending. Because
Okay,
until
go to
we,
municipal,
It's
get the
posted.
damn information from.
but he
I'm
can't-
sorry, Tom. I'm afraid we can't give you a sufficient explanation that satisfies you. I apologize. But they don't have the manpower to produce the information needed to generate that report.
I believe they hired somebody, an accountant, but they only lasted 2 months, or a very, very small time.
They had someone
you
in there
blame
for
them?
some reason, they had to transfer her out because of they
Something-
needed it someplace else.
They started and stopped as quick as they got in there.
Yeah, it was only a couple months she was there.
They didn't even get comfortable. I
Yeah,
mean,
there was
it's-
it didn't
it's
last
tough.
long.
I
Can
mean,
I ask, is our technology system such that someone in Wyoming can't drive the ambulance, but could do some of these jobs?
Yeah,
And do we
That's a
look,
good question.
and maybe we don't, maybe our system doesn't support that
Well,
much.
Step outside when you go out and count the number of yellow sheets on the bulletin board.
Yeah.
Those are the empties,
Yeah.
and that's not unusual.
And we're looking
But the-
across the country, I'm sure.
But the question is,
Yeah.
could somebody do this work remotely? If
Remotely.
we can't find someone here
Yeah, it
to
would
do the
be,
job, can we find someone
They,
somewhere else?
they would have to be given access to the database,
Right.
They
right?
would,
Yeah.
and
And
And you'd have to have a system, accounting
That would-
system that would allow
Allow
that.
Exactly, so that's the
Exactly.
question, do
And
we?
I don't know if they do.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
India.
Or just
Go to
generally, a
India.
number of jobs. Yeah, go, well, offshore, but I just don't know, because it is, you're right, Jerry, that is the problem
Yeah.
in many
Given
companies.
access.
But it would be, if we were able to, it might be,
Might be an answer.
In Wareham's pay scale for a lot of these jobs, I'm not gonna put it at the top of the
in
pyramid either.
Massachusetts is,
I'm
but
low.
if you're in Wyoming, maybe,
trying to be nice.
North Dakota,
It's low,
But
because I literally,
Snow in
my
there.
daughter-in-law works for another town,
hey, it's
and I
so
said, you could be
Concord,
working
Mass.
2 minutes around the corner, and she flat out said I couldn't take the cut and pay I'd have to take in Wareham.
Yeah. Unless she's
She doesn't-
working,
Everything that you've mentioned as a
Somewhere else.
solution, I can assure you,
I'm sure,
has
yeah.
been looked
I'm
at
sure,
and
yeah.
tried.
yeah. The question is, it may very well be, our system doesn't allow
Doesn't
that
support
kind
that,
of.
yeah.
It doesn't, and I'm not even sure, now we're talking about the accounting. Now, she's just inputting all this information, paying the bills, et cetera. The other departments have to have certain functions they have to perform. They're shorthanded and not able to complete everything, so they prioritize what is necessary.
Yeah. We're putting
And
out
that
fires all
process,
the
that
time.
process,
I know.
as that process
Like
goes
every
forward,
company.
sooner or later, something catches up, not in a timely fashion. But I've been through every single office in this building, I've talked with every single department head. And I can assure you, they are doing their best they can, they just don't have the manpower to do everything you ask.
Well, then they ought to look at what they need to do and figure out what they can not do without and get the critical
Tom,
stuff done.
It's the only reason we're still functioning is they've already done that.
yeah.
The captain doesn't, the captain doesn't call down to the boiler room and say, give me
20 turns, and the guy calls back, I haven't got people to do it. I mean, he gets it done.
You know, the captain goes down there and does it, which means that he can't make that call.
That's right.
So
So if the captain goes down there to make those turns, that means he can't make
It's
the
just-
call.
It's not an acceptable answer, Bernie, that's.
Oh, I understand, Tom. I understand where you're coming from. I truly do.
there's-
I truly do.
there's
That,
gotta-
that's the way it is right now.
It's like, I would like to satisfy your request, because that's my responsibility.
It is my request.
Well, it is your request. You're interested in one thing, as all of us are.
All of us are, yeah.
Yeah.
But I just have that information in addition as to how they're trying to accomplish it and why they aren't able to. And I'm trying to communicate it to you, and you're in this building often also, stop and talk to Judy and find out why she's not producing it.
I don't wanna throw gas on the fire here though, but watch a school committee meeting, they get regular budget updates, and they can sit there and tell you they spent 25% of this line, or 30% of this line so far this
But
year.
they've got 5 accountants.
Well, that's the point I'm getting to. But they
Move some
have,
to Derek's
they have
office.
5 people in that office, and one does payroll,
Yeah.
and the other 3 do everything else, in the business manager. So there's a total of 5 people in there, and the school committee gets, if you watch the school, they get regular budget updates on how much they got in each line item. And in some, you can see they've spent 75% in the first quarter, but they've bought a lot of paper and pencils, whatever the case may be.
But that might
They
be
can
our
justify
future,
it.
once we get the folks back. That
Yeah,
could
once
be
we have-
every
Yeah, but-
department,
right,
but
yeah.
that's-
When we don't have 1.5 people to oversee every department in the
Right.
town
The
of
only
Wareham,
way we're gonna get
we can get that info.
that staffing, like you say, she has 2, she's at least 1 more, if not 2. The only way we're getting those is if we go through an override. Because the revenue is not there to support those extra people anymore. We've had to absorb it in the actual cost of doing business over the last 2 or 3 years.
Well, even if you had the money, finding the humans.
Yeah.
That's the other issue.
Oh,
There's,
Sure.
there's
Yeah.
11 million open jobs and 5 million people to fill 'em.
Yep.
That's the problem. We do not have, there's no one there, to your point, to throw the coal into the.
Or you ought to stand outside the door
I'm just-
at Twitter.
Those are
at
different
Amazon,
people. Those are
because they're
different
coming out the door.
Yeah.
But they're not here. They're-
Yeah, those are different people, but the
They're not-
reality is, those people have a job tomorrow. There's just a huge shortage of people. And it's what I do for a living, so I'm just telling, this is what we're dealing with. There's just not people to hire for jobs. You can advertise all you want, there's just no one to fill the job. You can spend $1 million on advertising and not fill your jobs.
Okay, so then, but you need the information, so then you figure out a system that operates on the number of people you got.
Or not,
I mean, that's what you.
or you just wing it.
Huh?
Or you just wing it. A lot of people are just winging it.
In fact, Norma sent, from the New York Times article, it was addressing a lot of the issues. In fact, Tom is referring to also the number of people that are no longer in the workforce.
Right.
They dropped out.
A lot of them
People
due to
our
COVID.
age were working
Yeah.
before COVID, and when COVID hit, we decided we didn't have to work.
I don't need this
I'll
anymore.
downsize,
Yeah.
sell my house, move into a smaller one, live totally off my pension, very comfortably. I don't have to work, which is what I did, because I had a big mansion in Bridgewater. Downsize, I'm very comfortable
But
in
there's
doing
a-
so. And then there's another section, for some reason or other, they can't figure out why they won't go to work.
it's-
Yeah, there's a,
Well, look, we
Great
can
When
they're
talk about
panhandling
this
in
for a
front
long
of
What a
time.
great resignation.
a
But
now
it's-
hiring sign, I mean.
But it's bigger than that, because there's other ways for people to make money. So
That's
they don't need to take the McDonald's job or the job at, Walmart and all that other stuff. So what's happened is, and there's less people. So the
Oh, yeah.
birth rate has gone down. So this is unique now that we're dealing with. So you've got a point where you've got less people, less of a birth rate, and because, without getting political, the United States also, immigrants don't wanna come to the United States like they used to because of the political environment, so you don't have that influx of people. We are one of the few countries that actually could solve our unemployment problem if we actually addressed the immigration and made it friendly for those folks to come back into the country again, which we don't right now. So.
Well, in contrast, because there's a lot of people pouring across our border, but they're all unskilled. And
But
you're
there are many
referencing to the
skilled-
skilled.
skilled
we don't
immigrants
have.
who will
Yeah.
not come.
Who will not
Very
come. Yes.
highly skilled.
High
immigrants
tech
who
Yes,
will
is
not
struggling
that's the
with
group
that.
that we
Or have
we
been
need.
told they can't come.
Tech is
Right.
absolutely struggling with that.
Yeah.
They do
And-
not wanna come.
And if they come, and if they get laid off, like at Twitter, they get 60 days to either find a new job or
leave.
leave. That's unrealistic.
Yeah.
You know, they give somebody a year or some, make it so that they can act, so that they're more welcome, and that's not happening.
But you also do have people
Jerry,
who have not
did
come
you
back to work,
copy
who
that?
are not retired,
Were you able
because
to-
they've realized they are happy living on less than what they were making. They-
That's why we got
it's-
robotic pizza makers and
I'm already
stuff like
setting up
that.
the new folder for
You-
this.
You change.
I'm already setting up the new
This is a
folder
situation
online.
you change, you just don't say, all bets are off, I
My
can't do it.
PDF.
Well, I can go into McDonald's and
just
do my
how
own
you
order
do it,
now
what you do.
on a kiosk.
I'm gonna do that before I get.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. Tom?